Okay, so we've got minimal viable product strategies. Okay, and this concept is lowest initial cost to create a profitable business, and that is a key point. It is not a viable product until your business is profitable. And profitable to me, the way I'm defining it and using it here, is not just um, making money at the end of the year. This is a 3 month strategy, as we'll see a little bit further along. And I want to be able to make income that is reasonable to sustain individuals within that 3 month period. I know some of you that cash flow for personal income is going to be important, and so uh, if that's the case, then this is geared in regards to finding the right scenario for you to be able to have income and pay yourself within that first harvest period, so that you have that cash flow. If there's credit card debt that you need to be paying down, this factors that in. This is with that in mind. Now, if those two factors are not a limiting factor for getting into a business that is in your mind profitable and worth going after, then that just means that the criteria that you need to meet is a little bit easier than what we're going through. Okay, but I've gone through this, and I've been as conservative as I can with the numbers I use and the amount of things that are put in to make this a full working system. There may be a couple places that could be cut, corners that could be cut to save on cost or to speed up time, but I have not included anything that is, outside of getting still optimum results from your end product. So you can hit the highest price point, which I believe is the most effective way to run the business in the indoor grow process. And so uh, the big key here, the problem that I'm solving, excuse me, with this strategy is breaking that barrier of entry to institutional financing. And life is always easy if you can match up with a private investor that wants to fund the entire grow, or an entire project, which several of us have gone through and attempted to make happen, and that is a wall that we have hit. The appetite for large sums invested by private investors is just not as great as it was previously, and that's something that has shifted pretty quickly, and that happens in markets. And you need to be able to respond to that, opposed to sitting and waiting for the conditions to return to something favorable. We need to see what happened, what the new challenge to overcome is, and find that strategy to get over it as quick as possible, and then also still see, is this still a very profitable venture. Okay, so let's go through this, and we'll be answering those questions. Okay, so for for our business, what's our inflection point? What is that point where things start to shift and start working in our favor, in order to get over that threshold for institutional investing, and then to speed up our process of growth and profitability? So most institutional investors, Canafun, 420 Lending, and the lenders that they work with, Diamond Financing, I believe, is another one, Blue Sky Bank. A lot of those lenders, institutional lenders, they require a 3 to 6 months of business history, and that's really shown by bank statements showing a profit. They want the history, the business history, but they also want to show that your business is being profitable as a good investment to approve. And so then we think, all right, well, when can we show this first profit? And that first profit for a grow is going to come at the end of your first harvest. Okay. And how long is that going to take us? That's going to be about 3 months from the start of your grow all the way through the harvest and sale. And so a 3 month period allows for 8 to 12 weeks of grow with then 2 weeks of dry time um, in that range. And so you should be thinking the 3 month time period before you have that product that's going to be able to leave your facility and turn into monies. And that is convenient because that is the amount of time that you need your business to mature. Um, Now, if they require a 6 month period for that financing group, that group may not be viable if you need to have it happen as soon as possible, depending on how much funding you have available. And so some of those lenders may not be what you want to work with, and you'll need to work with someone that's looking for 3 months of business history as part of their terms for the loan. But if you have a little bit more funding, if you're able to handle longer operating costs, then that 6 month time frame, you can work with that finance group, and it would be then the 6 month time period where you can start magnifying and really leveraging that institutional lending. Okay, but both of those scenarios can work with this strategy. Okay, so the first thing we want to look in as far as the financial barriers are going to be the the operating costs. Okay, and so we've got 3 months of operating costs to factor in. And so the first thing, utilities, with electric at about 15 cents a kilowatt, which is New Mexico. That's their pricing. And then we're looking at really the lighting is the biggest one. The other equipment draws some power as well. I used a technique, and I'll show you a little bit later, just to kind of capture all that minutia. But the lights are the biggest draw of that electricity, and so off of an Optics 8 light, which is, in my opinion, a pretty good standard of a high quality light that I want to be working with. Not advocating for it specifically, but I have all the parameters from that, and most other high quality LED lights are going to fit pretty close to this mold of 0.79 kilowatts an hour, and then you have 8 lights over 30 days for 3 months. And that comes out to be roughly $572 in your electric bill for a 200 square foot grow. Okay. And then the water, I just did a rough estimate. $100 to $200 for utilities on water is plenty. And that's going to vary if you're going to do hydroponics versus soil, which I did do the pricing out for both of those possibilities. Then your rent. And so the idea is that we lease these properties versus buying the property outright. And by doing that, your initial investment is cut by hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? And so instead of eliminating some of the smaller private investors, you're opening up, starting the business with a quote smaller investor. This is still going to be $60,000 to $100,000 to invest and get started, but that is smaller than, say, your $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 projects just to purchase the property, be it just the property or the property and a grow. That's a very tough threshold when you don't have that initial funding. And so to lease a space both in Oklahoma as well as New Mexico. Um, we're looking for properties that we can get the rent to $1,000 to $3,000 a month, and that would mean you're looking at 1,000 to 3,000 square foot grow spaces. Okay, and to lease, that would be commercial or industrial type spaces that are open and outside of your retail outlet mall type spots that perhaps already have security fencing around it. That would be a good location, uh, and can save on any of those security aspects. That is all positive. And so the closer we get to that 1,000 square foot, and in my opinion, it's going to be your 1,000 to 2,000 square foot property is going to be a sweet spot. And you'll see as we go through the numbers how that works out. Then you have your grower's salary. And your grower, anywhere between $2,500 and $4,000 a month for their salary. And for a small grow like this, you really only need a grower, maybe a grower and some temporary help with trim, during the trim process. But for these smaller grow areas that we're going to target, that should reduce the operating cost, and that's a range that you can be looking in. So your total operating costs are going to be between 9,172 and 15,772. Okay, based off of those numbers, and this will shift. And as we magnify what we're doing to different levels, which I'll explain in a little bit, let's look at sort of the fixed cost of this. Over that 3-month period, your grower salary is not going to change unless you add on temporary help for trim and that type of thing. And so if we grow the modules as we grow, this grower salary is kind of a fixed cost for that operating cost. It's not going to change if we're growing 200 square feet or 400 square feet or 600 square feet. After 600 square feet, then you're going to need to start getting into hiring maybe a second person and some temporary help, etc. But for that first two growth sizes that we're going to talk about, that's a fixed cost. Your rent is a fixed cost. It doesn't matter anything up to the 1,000 or 2,000 square feet, whatever size building you're in, that cost is not going to change. Okay. Your electric cost is going to increase. Your water cost is going to increase, but those are really kind of small amounts. And so that means this build out scale or build out setup is able to scale. And so let's look at the actual build out cost and see how that works. Okay. If everybody is following with me, do you have any questions yet about the operating costs? If you're good with all the operating costs, just give me a keep going in the chat. And with operating cost, there is more detail that you can get really nitty gritty about that. But this part right here, okay, great. With the build out, this is the part that we work in to eliminate the minutia. Okay, so your modular build out for each 200 square feet of grow space plus 10% of GOK. What is GOK? GOK stands for God only knows. All the little things that you forget, um, little things that happen that you can never plan for. The things that God only knows about, we put about 10% into that. Okay, so all these costs are the item list plus 10%, and that 10% means if I didn't add in something for operating costs, maybe there's there's a not a HSA, but a builder, like a commercial building HSA added expense, and it comes out to, like, I don't know, $50 a month or something like that for the area that you're in. If it's something stupid like that, or a part of the utilities, maybe you add internet in order to have access to security cameras on your phone. Those are minutia type expenses that you can't forget about, but you need to be able to make these decisions when you're looking at the properties quickly. And so now you know that those little minutia things are taken care of in these prices already. And so for the build out, for this build out, a soil grow, um, and we're going to go through these items. The soil grow is going to be between 11,765 and 14,362 for anywhere between 54 and 63 plants, which is approximately how many you can get in to a 20 by 10 tent. And so a 20 by 10 is going to be a 200 square foot grow space. And we're going to build these out in modules. Okay. And so each of these modules has that cost. And so each time you grow, it's going to be this chunk of money. And then for hydroponics, the material costs on that, I'm less certain about, because that's really not my area of expertise. And so I actually open this up as we go through and take a look at the basic things that I've factored in for hydroponics. If there's major items that are missing and need to be included with the pricing, then I'm more than happy to revisit the details on that and add it in. But I wanted to give at least a good idea of what that's going to look like. And so hydroponics is 11,319 to 13,519 for the same amount of plants. For our conversation purposes, 11,500 per module is what we're going to talk about. Okay. All right, so I'm going to switch screens and go to my browser and show you my grocery list for the build out. And let's see here, change my screen to, where am I at? I think this is the one I'm on. No. Okay, yeah, this is it. Okay, and come on, get out my screen's playing with me. Okay, so let's go through some of the basic items. Because we are reducing the environment size down to our 200 square foot by 7 to 8 feet. You can have extensions on some of them, but essentially 7 feet tall. We've reduced the volume that we're trying to control significantly. And so what we would normally build out in a warehouse scenario, we would need commercial sized equipment. And when we are talking about that $30,000 for a 300 square foot grow that we initially taught at the summit, and the size of equipment that we talk about, a lot of that is commercial sized equipment, and so we're able to reduce this significantly to smaller units, very inexpensive units that hit the retail market, and because they're produced in mass quantities, the pricing is comparatively a lot better for what they're able to put out and for what we need. And so something like this, which is a humidifier, okay, um, and at $120 for this one, this is a good quality humidifier. Um, we would do an AC unit, which I believe this one is rated for 500 cubic feet. Okay, so 500 cubic feet, we'd either have 1 to 2 of these in a tent setup to be able to handle that temperature um, uh, change. And with proper airflow, you can make that actually very efficient. And then this one comes with a dehumidifier. You could also break it down into units that are just AC units, and are rated for 700 plus cubic feet, and then a separate dehumidifiers, but the price is going to be roughly the same. But being able to reduce the volume that we have to handle, we can take it down to these smaller units. Okay. Your carbon air filter, and I still think for a carbon filter, having like an 8-inch, even for a 200 square foot space, is good. I want to have good solid airflow in and out. That's going to help with temperature control, as well as bringing in carbon dioxide from the outside air to help during the grow periods, especially flower. Whether we have the CO2 injector or not, we can still push these flowers quite a bit as long as we have good airflow in and out. And then the induction fan. You can get these as a total set, but this was just for the 8-inch induction fan. And then our biggest expense is going to be with the Optic 8. Or with the lighting, I should say. So the Optic 8, so 1,200. I've seen them as low as $1,000. We also have the Highgrove Magnolia 6, which is a 4x4 during flower, as much as 5x5. So that's still in our the footprint of our grow spate. That's going to be 6 to 8 lights that we can utilize, and that's around $1,000. Okay, and this is all very high quality lighting still. And there's other light brands that you can go with, but the previous webinar that I did in regards to the details, being able to get the LEDs close to the canopy, to have an effective energy consumption, to have a detailed layout on the amount of or how intense the light is. And so the PPFD here for the lighting, 1375. I talked about the intensity that you're going to need once you get to flower. And you want to make sure that it's a full spectrum. This has red, far red, and ultraviolet lighting to get the full spectrum. And so $1,000 a light for that. This is the part where I brought in a hydroponic system. And so, this is just a basic setup for a hydroponics. You're going to have, you'll need 54 to 63 pots, so you need a little bit more than what this system is. And so I actually did factor that into the numbers that I did for the equation, how much it would actually be. But this is kind of the area that you can find this stuff at. For this is retail. This is on Amazon, so it's not even the best prices. You can go to places like Craigslist and find better deals, but at the very least, we're looking at something you can get ordered and shipped and simple, so anybody can do this. Then you're going to want your nutrient mix for the hydroponics. If you're doing the soil grow, I factored in the soil, which I think I'll get to in a little bit as well. But for the hydroponics, the Dirty Dozen Fox Farm is a good set for the hydroponics. But I usually would leave it to my grower and what they're familiar with in regards to the nutrients and the nutrient schedule. But factor out a 3-month period, a full grow cycle for this. And then for the soil, the fabric pots, which are really inexpensive, but these are the 10 gallons. And so I build out the 10-gallon layout. If we needed to jam more plants in per square foot, we could go with a smaller pot, but I think the 10 gallons is going to be a more efficient system from my experience, and have plants that grow and produce larger volume and can maximize that canopy space in the way that we taught you to train the plants and to lollipop and defoliate properly. And then this is the artisan soil. This from Build a Soil, the Take and Bake is essentially the soil mix that I teach at the summit. It has all of the ingredients, and you can order this up directly. And it would take about, I believe, 8 to 9 pallets to fill up a 200 square foot grow with the 54 10-gallon pots or 63 10-gallon pots. And so that comes out, I believe, to the high side $3,200 for all this soil. And so that is all worked out in those numbers that we just went over. Okay. And then the control system for your lighting and your PAR meter, controlling the light intensity at the canopy, temperature, humidity. You want a control system to make that part simple. And so, $200 to $300 for a system like that is included. The one thing that security camera. I mean, we need to have security system, and so that's still involved. But you're going to go with like minimum security camera. You're not going to blow on $1,000 camera setup right here because we're trying to get in as economically as possible. But you still want the important things like getting onto your phone and having it mobile and easy. Okay. So that is still part of it. Like I said, going on Craigslist to find better deals is another way to cut down on that initial cost, to find better. This was just another nutrient mix, nothing specific. And then, what I had gone through and actually adjusted from my previous model is adding in the stage for needing a nursery. Okay, and so adding the racks and the racks with the basic grow lights, and so about 2 of these racks are going to be able to house enough baby plants to be able to set up that 200 plus square foot grow, and so that's factored in, plus the starter pods and the domes with potting soil to start your seeds or to start growing your clones. Okay. And then I brought this up just in case, in order to try to maximize space in the 200 square foot tent. The tables on rollers, I personally don't think they I think it's a little bit more cumbersome. But if you're trying to squeeze in a little bit more square footage, you would be able to utilize it like this with the trays. But you know, you're already working with a limited ceiling height, and so unless you had trays that are be able to adjust very low, um, there's a couple issues with that. So I did not include trays on my numbers, but that is an option you can think about. Okay, so I'm going to switch back now that you've seen all the different things that I've added into our 200 square foot module. I'm going to go back to that, to the PowerPoint, and so that's basically my grocery list. That's what we've seen so far is what I'm going to go and buy and spend on the build out cost. Now, this does not include genetics, clones, and seeds. So that is another expense that would need to go into that. My 10%, maybe that covers that, maybe it doesn't, depending on your genetics that you're looking at. And so there's still some variability. And so let's go into the actual numbers and the profitability, and you can see, um, where we can adjust numbers if you have a little bit more expense, a little bit less. I have a range that I've put this in to know how flexible the numbers are to get to profitability. So if everybody's still following along, just type in profitability or profit in the chat. And I did see a couple people pop in since we started. Do not worry, this is recorded. I will have it on YouTube for you guys to check out and watch it later to catch up. But this is basically, we broke it down into the fastest way to get to financing and to be able to utilize smaller investors to start the business so that we can get business experience and bank statement history so that we then qualify for institutional financing and can rapidly grow the operation to the point that we want to be, thousands of square feet of grow space. But this is how the profitability lays out. So we have 200 square feet. We have 6 to 8 lights, and that's the 54 to 63 plants in the actual how much we can fit in that space. And the way I work that out, which I really should have put together a slide that shows the footprint layout of the plants. But essentially, in your 20 by 10 tent square, there's a front row of about 2.5 to 3 feet walk space to get from each row. And then in between each set of lights, there's a 2-foot walkway on the edge of the tent and in between essentially 3 to 4 rows of lights and plants underneath of them. And you would be able to fit rows 3 by 6 plants. So three plants wide and 6 plants long. And be able to do a layout like that and maximize your grow space with still leaving enough walk space to be able to get to all of the plants and to be able to take care of them properly. So that's very important to me. And so 6 to 8 grow lights, you would be able to do about 1.5 pounds per light. And then this is New Mexico numbers. Oklahoma is lower than this right now. It's probably closer to the $1,000 a pound range. I've been focused recently on the New Mexico markets, so I'm not as positive about that. For the people that are working in Oklahoma, we'll adjust these numbers, or you're able to adjust the numbers, and we'll talk about that on the next slide. But that represents roughly $18,000 to $24,000 gross profit, or I should say income, per harvest. So at the end of our first 3 months, this is the number that we're looking at. Our expenses or with 200 square foot. So one tent is going to be able to do this. Our expenses for operating cost is 9,172 to 15,772. That's from the low range all the way to the high range. Okay. And I wanted to show I mean, there's a big difference there, right? And there's a lot of things that you can try to work towards the 9,000, but if you're in the scenario where the more expensive version is what you actually arrive with, we want to be prepared for what that looks like. And then our build out cost, we averaged between soil and hydroponics at about 11,500 for easier math. And so our total cost range is between $20,000 and $27,000. Okay. So that's how I come up with those numbers. Feel free to go through that and kind of have that as your calculation template. If there's adjustments to that, major adjustments for one thing or the other, that's where I would be looking to tweak and to specialize this to your specific deal, your specific situation. But that is how I lay it out. Okay. Now, is it a profitable business? That's the question we need to answer. Okay. Oh, I've got some windows on my screen. Here we go. This is the question that we need to answer. And so at one module, 200 square foot grow, that's one tent. What's the profitability or how much cash flow do I have at the end of that 3-month period? You've got your 20K to 27 versus the 18 to 24 income. So I've kind of matched it up low side to high side. You're going to be a negative 2,672 to negative 3,000 cash flow at the end of your 3-month period. That doesn't mean that the business is not a profitable business. You could take these numbers, submit it to a institutional investor, and they would be able to see that and extrapolate from the startup cost and then the operating cost. They would see that by the end of the first year, you're going to be a very profitable business, right? And you would be able to you'd be able to qualify for several of their loans. But I wanted to see profitable business defined by at the end of that 3 months to be able to be making money, so you're not having to be rice and beans if you need this as your income, right? And so if you don't need it as your right away income, if you have another job and this is something that you're going to augment and add on, then that may not be an issue, and you'd be able to start up with an initial investment of around 27, so call it $30,000 from a private investor. So that's a very achievable goal. That's something that you may not have that chunk of money right now, but you'd be able to find a partner, a private lender that would be willing to do $30,000 to get your operation up and running. And then you would then be profitable and start getting positive cash flow upon month 6 to 9. But let's go and try. How do we do this and make money now? And so if we build that out to 2 modules, now we're looking at $3,000 to $8,000 positive cash flow. And the reason that we get there is because we don't have the initial or we have the initial startup cost, but our profitability, and this is in New Mexico, our profitability scales faster. And so each module that we grow, even for that first 3-month period, is going to increase or catch up a little bit more on the deficit that we start out with from the building cost. And then if we can get it to 3 modules, which is 600 square feet, so 3 tents. And I did add in the cost here additional trimmers for the trim portion. I added an additional cost for that because at the 600 square foot range, it is very arguable that you would need extra help to come in and make that happen. But in the 200 and the 400 range, with the the cost of your grower between 2,500 and $4,000 a month. If he's worth $4,000, or he or she is worth 4,000, then they need to be able to get that trimmed for 400 square feet. If they're only worth 2,500, right, and maybe need a little help, well, then there's plenty of room in that budget in our range that we have here to add for a second grower, a second part-time trimmer, that kind of thing. And so you can see by our a third module, you're at a profitable business, up and running, and putting money in your pocket within that 3-month period. If this is making sense to everybody, put money in the chat line. If you have questions at this point, you can also put that up in the chat. Like it. Now, is this making is this matching up with the model that you have in your mind of what it would take? And I asked that. I'm confident with my numbers because I've been going through and pouring through the details, and I've built more than one model to get here. Like I said, I've changed the expenses on it. I've added a few things in order to truly get a functional system to get to your first grow. But I want you to think, what is in your mental model of what would it take to get your first grow, and is there anything missing in this system? And I constantly go back and forth and revisit this and make sure that I'm not missing something. Maybe it's an obvious thing. Oftentimes there's little items that need to be considered that may not be taken up in your minutia. If there is significant license fee, like if you don't have the license yet, okay, that would be something that we need to add to this. If you're in Oklahoma and you are needing to buy a license, you can look for licenses for sale, just the license, and I've seen them on there for as low as $5,000 on 420 properties. So they're not selling their license and their grow together. They're just selling their license. If they have a license that's expired within 90 days, you can renew that for, I think it's I want to say a $200 late fee. And so you might be able to get a better deal on something like that. Oh, 500? Is it 500? Okay. A $500 late fee. Thank you, Erica. That you would need to pay. But if they can't sell their license before it expires, it's now worth nothing to them. So you can negotiate really hard for that kind of stuff. And that's not really a market that people are thinking about. Okay? That's something that's unique. And so talking about Oklahoma and the price being lower, instead of building out more modules, because the profitability versus the cost of an added module, it's almost equal, right? So instead of making 18 to 24, you're making $9,000 to $12,000 per module, and your cost for build out is close to $12,000, right? So building extra modules isn't going to get there faster in the first 3 months, but by the 6-month period, if you get to the 2 to 3 modules after 6 months, then you're being profitable. You're cash flow positive. And so think about that and the pricing differences that you would have to change or adjust to these numbers. But this is a good foundation to go off of. And I hope you guys are seeing the concept and the plausibility of this. Yes, rent and utilities are included in this. I believe that was for your operating cost. Your rent for, remember, 1,000 to 2,000 or 1,000 to 3,000 square foot building to be able to build out, to have enough space to have 600 square feet of grow. Excuse me. And then to expand from that point. Okay. And so additional funding options, you can look for startup financing from those institutional investors, right? From the bank lenders and the institutional lenders. Fund and grow, Mike. I know you know a lot about that. And fund and grow, once you get up and running, can start reducing that burden from month to month. If you haven't maxed out your credit cards, if you have credit cards or credit on your cards that you're able to put, and maybe it's $5,000 on a credit card to make it through that first 3 months. Sometimes it's just a matter of a couple $1,000s to get the business up and running. And once it's running, then after your first and second harvest, you can start paying down that credit card. But you can use that as a strategy. And I know a lot of people have already used that, but keep it in mind. And asking to extend your or expand your credit, or for applying for additional cards if you haven't gone past that 2 to 3 card limit, which I wouldn't recommend going higher than that. Then the short-term one-time investment type loans. So this is going to someone not looking to do an investment for, a 5-year lend period, but say, I just need a quick loan for. I've got a solid investor that was put down $30,000, but I need an extra 10,000 to do the full build out and to get one more module into it. To speed up the profitability, then you can do a negotiation like, all right, for your $10,000 for a 3-month period, and then at the end of the first harvest, I'll be able to pay you, $1,000 on top of your money, okay, and work it out that way, or go to the 6-month period and have it be a one-time investment, a fast turnaround, those short-term loans, in order to bridge whatever gap is left over. Okay. Then we have ramping it up and making it profitable as quick as we can. So this is really the strategy part of it after we've set up the build. So once you have that 3-month bank statement, you would then apply for business loans and equipment loans. Equipment loans allow you to build more modules, and business loans would be like cash flow loans, kind of like Fund and Grow would provide you for operating costs. And so business loans, cash flow loans, those would be able to help reduce that, which at the end of the month, that means your profitability is higher. Pay down the credit cards with the profit from the first harvests to increase your credit score. And by increasing your credit score, you're going to be able to qualify for larger loans and better rates. So if you can get it from that 680, which is kind of the minimum, you get up to 720, 780, 800 by paying down the usage. Not too fast, right? We want to make sure that there is some debt on your cards, so that it affects your credit score to its optimum effect, but aggressively paying it down below 30% is a good idea to increase that credit score and then to get better rates and higher amounts. Then you would build additional modules with those funds, or the added profitability at the end of harvest. Stagger harvests every 2 weeks to have consistent cash flow and make the business run more smoothly, so you don't have to take the cash flow loans. You can focus more on equipment loans. Add separate nurseries, and mother rooms and dry rooms, because initially you can start in a 20 by 10. You can flip from the nursery into your veg, from veg to flower, flower to harvest, to the dry room in that 20 by 10. It can be all in that one place if you need it to be. But as you build out, you'll be able to start your nursery before the beginning before the next harvest, and so you can maximize the number of harvests in a year. Then max out the lease space. So Mike says Fund to Grow does pull every 3 months if you are at the right ratios, 50% and 30% biz and 30% personal for 1 year. Okay, so that's great. Yeah, I'm learning more about Fund and Grow. I'm not going to go too much into it right now, but that's a great program to get involved with and to utilize in the strategy. And so you maximize the lease space. So you're doing as much as you can in that space. Maybe it's 1,000 square feet. Maybe you can build out to 2,000 square feet. And then in that time period where you're now making money, you're positive. You don't have to stress because of making payments on bills. You're searching for the next property to purchase for your long-term grow. And maybe this is in New Mexico, right? Maybe the market is still really good in New Mexico. Prices are still up in the next year or 2 years, however long you're building out your business. Or maybe there is a big price shift that happened just like in Oklahoma, where the prices come closer to the excuse me, the national averages, because it's no longer a quote new market, or it becomes more saturated. Well, so far we're in a very temporary modular setup. What if Virginia becomes the new big market? You're now flexible and you could buy your long-term grow in Virginia. And there's a bit of buying real estate and pulling out funds through the real estate in order to get it out of state. But there's a whole strategy for that. So I'm not concerned about that part right now. But you would be able to have the flexibility to shift if need be, or you could stay where you're at. If you've built up a good network, you have a lot of good mojo with your business, then you can let it ride. Excuse me. Okay, so that is, oops. Okay, so that is the details. Let me share that screen and we'll get back to, okay. So that is the game plan strategy and how we get all the way to ramping it up. And do you have, let's see, do you have any questions from that point? Any questions from the crowd? And you can always email me, if you don't have a question right now, but you go through the webinar again and something pops up, or you're running numbers, you see something that isn't included in here. I've run through a lot of different scenarios, so some of the stuff I didn't add in specifically, but I tried to make it as detailed as possible. Oh, so the staggering. So just as a general growth strategy, if you have all your plants in a 1,000 square foot area, right, it's going to be hard to have different growth cycles. But because we're growing this in a modular fashion, 200 square feet, I can start that grow, and 2 weeks later, in my second tent, I can start another grow. With maybe the same strain, maybe a different one that requires slightly different environment. One would be going through veg, while the other one flipped to flower, and you've changed the light cycle. So one tent doesn't affect the light cycle of another. And so by staggering that by a 2 week period, you'll have enough time to harvest, not have a massive harvest, have 2 weeks or a harvest of one of your tents, manage that while you're maintaining the other ones, because going through flower is a lot easier to maintain than the actual harvest period, a lot less excuse me, manual labor. And then 2 weeks later, your second tent comes to harvest, and maybe your third tent is 2 weeks behind that, and all of a sudden you're back to your first tent, which is coming up in another 2 to 4 weeks. And so you get a cycle like that, and you have harvests that aren't selling 100% of your square footage, right? You're not selling 1,000 square feet of grow at once, but every 2 weeks you're getting a paycheck. Every 2 weeks. That's a big difference than every 3 months, especially if you have different bills, or you're trying to pay down your credit cards for better credit. You're paying back your loans, or you have the deal that you worked out with your lender is a little bit more aggressive as far as getting them paid back quickly, and that gives you more ability to make an attractive offer to those potential private investors. So if that makes sense, just give me a stagger, and I'll know that you got that. And we can again we can talk more about this in detail. All right, fantastic. So I do have a call to get to. Another student, and if you have any other questions, please email me. We'll go over this. This is, I think, the most viable strategy going forward. Very viable in both Oklahoma and New Mexico. Different sub strategies for each of those places. But if you're have been having a hard time getting the funding for a large grow, let's look at it from this angle. Let's attack it from this direction, and see if we can't crack that egg and get it started, and work with some of the other investors that have a sizable amount of funds to put forward, but can't meet that $200,000-300,000 threshold. I think that's going to open you up to a lot more opportunities, a lot more people to be partners with. And I'd love to see more of the Leafy Learning students working together to get this done. Okay, so I'm gonna end it there, and we'll talk next week. When I do another webinar. All right, everybody have a great night. I'll talk to you later.